What's going on, guys? Caveman here and welcome back. And in this video, I'll be featuring a team revolving around Annihilape in the GreatLeague. You may recognize this team as one I featured last season, which if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it down below in the description. But in this video, I'll be giving it a more in-depth breakdown of what to do against those common leads and save swaps you'll see. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Annihilape into Shadow Drapion. Now this is one matchup where you just stay in and play out the zero shield scenario. You let the first move go, which is most likely the crunch, just in case they get that defense drop, and then you CMP tie with the close combat on their Aqua Tail. The reason why is because this way it punishes a no shield from your opponent. If they try and call that Rage Fist bait, they will survive and hang on and be able to take you out. But if you go for the close combat like I do here and they try and no shield it, you'll take them out and you'll reach another move depending on what they bring in. But either way, you get switch alignment, which is very, very nice. If they do end up shielding that move, you just let it go and then come in with your own Shadow Drapion. This matchup, they come in with Azu, get a nice little bubble down. I'm gonna, once I land that Rage Fist, I'm going to save my Annihilape for a potential catch in the end game, then hard swap into my Shadow Drapion and just start spamming off these crunches. Here, my opponent does let me reach another crunch, so I'm going to fire it off before they reach another move. Does get a shield from them, which is very nice. And I'm just gonna let this go. I'm still not in play rough range yet, so I know that I can hang on. I do, and now I'm gonna hard swap out into Wigglytuff, and they have a Diggersby. And now this is gonna be a little bit of a tricky end game just because of how bulky Diggersby is, that the charms will, not be doing as much to it as they would to a Glacier Pokemon, as well as the fact that Diggersby has decent pacing, as well as not bad charge moves in Fire Punch and Scorching Sands. So I will shield up their first move, so I can land the Icy Wind and get that debuff. And now because I land that debuff, I will be able to tank 2 Scorching Sands. This may seem like a Scorching Sand would take out from here, but this is a -1 Scorching Sand, so I am able to hang on. I then hard swap into my Drapion, reading that they might pivot into Azu to try and bubble me down. We don't let that happen. We get to the Aqua Tail to take out the Azu. And from here, this game is over. We don't quite reach that next Aqua Tail, but when we swapped out of the Wigglytuff there, we did store a Swift, so we just need to make sure this Diggersby is in Swift range, which is why I bring that Annihilape to get that counter's worth of damage. And now this Swift will be able to take out the Diggersby as we win the CMP tie, and down it goes. GG's. Next battle, we lead Annihilape into Dewgong. Fantastic lead, and this isn't necessarily based on the Dewgong lead, but a Drifblim safe swap. Shadow Drifblim or a regular Drifblim, you want to be quick. You want to go into your Wigglytuff, and then you just charm it all the way down. It's pretty simple. Whether it's Shadow or non-Shadow, you will be able to survive both Icy Winds and get the charm down. The Shadow's a little bit closer. If you have a little bit of a high ranked Wigglytuff, you will always be able to hang on. If your Wigglytuff is pretty poor IVs, I'm honestly think you might get Astonished down, so just something to keep in mind there. But either way, against the regular Drifblim, it works perfectly. I am double debuff, so these Swifts are going to do nothing. But I do go for the Icy Wind second instead of the Icy Wind first, because I wanted to limit the amount of Ice Shards that the Dewgong got, as well as drop its attack so my Annihilape isn't threatened by any energy lead. And because of that attack drop and the fact that it's landed against Annihilape, they swap out into a Wigglytuff, and this is just a 1 game. I need to make sure I throw on good timing here, because in the Wigglytuff matchup, Shadow Drapion is able to survive to land 3 Aqua Tails, but you can't let a charm through. If you let a charm through, that Wigglytuff can just shield and farm you down. So you need to make sure you're on good timing. And with that being on good timing, I do bring the Wigglytuff down into the red. I can just shield their move. And now this is a game over. Dewgong combo plays with an Icy Wind, but that does not matter as this is still close combat range on the Dewgong. Down it goes. And now these charms are going to chunk since my defense is dropped like it is, but I still would be able to get the counter down at time, of which my opponent realizes, so they concede. GG's. Next battle, Annihilape into Talonflame. Now I am ABB weak to this, but it's really not that bad. Annihilape does fine against Talonflame in the 1 shield scenario. So you throw 7 counters, go for that Rage Fist. Rage Fist does land. It will most likely land. and you just stay in. Then you shield their move, then you go 2 more counters, and then the Rage Fist, of which if they shield this one, it doesn't matter. You stay in, and you'll be able to get a simultaneous KO with them before they get an Incinerate down. Like, this is an Incinerate range, 1 Incinerate range, and if they try and go for the Incinerate down, those double boosted counters will be able to take out the Talonflame. They lose all that energy, right? And now, if they throw that move, you just let it go, you bring in your Drapion, whatnot. But in that lead scenario, if they shield that first Rage Fist you do, you play it out the same way. You land that second Rage Fist, which they shield that as well. You then hard pivot into your Drapion, and then you shield both of the moves that they will throw at your Drapion, or if you outpaced that Aqua Tail before. Because if you just stay in, if they shield both of your Rage Fists against the Annihilape, and then they farm you down, you're going to be in a very bad way with all of that energy that Talonflame has. So if they let the first Rage Fist go, you'll play it out like I told you to here. But if they shield both of those, you'll just pivot into your Shadow Drapion the second you fire off that second Rage Fist. Now they have a Shadow Gator in the back, and these charms are just going to chunk away at it and do a ton of damage to it. And at this point, I have a shield advantage, so I can just let the Wigglytuff go, watch for the catch with the Drapion, fire off this Aqua Tail before they reach a fly, and we had the back-to-back moves, so we can land the crunch against the Gator, and that is a good game. GG's. Next battle, Annihilape into Dunsparce. Now this is a little bit less of a Dunsparce lead and more of an Azu safe swap. You have to be extremely quick in your response to Shadow Drapion against an Azu. If you over tap and throw 2 counters, you're just falling behind in this matchup, and it's very crucial that you're quick into that Drapion safe swap. If you're able to get a crunch debuff on the first one, then that puts you in an amazing spot, as now you can win the zeros. But I get the crunch debuff on the second one. It doesn't matter because I'm not going to win zeros, but I'm not necessarily looking for switch advantage here. A very common team comp that I've been seeing recently is Dunsparce lead, Azu safe swap, and Talonflame in the back. So if you get alignment by like giving up a shield or whatnot, it doesn't necessarily matter because that Talonflame's just going to run through you, right? So what I recommend is letting your Drapion go down, and then coming in with Annihilape. And here, gosh, my opponent gets DRE, so that Poison Sting does not register from the Shadow Drapion, and then I get 1 turn bring in on my Annihilape, so that forces me to have to tank that Ice Beam, where if my opponent doesn't get DRE on that Poison Sting from the Shadow Drapion, and then I don't get 1 turn bring in there, I would be able to counter down that Azu without giving up that shield and them getting that move, and that energy lead is insurmountable for your opponent. Yeah, they can bring in Talon, but you just go 2 counters Rage Fist, 2 counters Rage Fist, 2 counters Rage Fist, and you just start shredding through that Talon, and it's just going to be an automatic win for you at that point. Now, if your opponent does have a really high ranked Azu, and you don't get those crunch debuffs throughout, there's a good chance that they still will survive to reach that move, of which in that case, you know, you play it out similar to how I saw here, but you get a crunch debuff, or their Azu's not as high ranked. That energy lead from countering down that Azu on your Annihilape is just going to instantly put you in a win position. But here, because the game state screwed me over by having to tank that Ice Beam where I wouldn't have needed to anyways, I'm now going to lose this game, where if I didn't need to tank that, that would just be an easy win. But GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Annihilape into opposing Annihilape. And now, this team comp, I recommend running a very high attack Annihilape. You want to ensure you win CMP in the mirror match, of which is very crucial, and that just sets you up very well for the rest of the game. But in this lead scenario, if your opponent lets the first Rage Fist go, I still like to shield theirs and then go for my next Rage Fist, knowing that, again, I win CMP tie, right? So I'll be able to force that shield back, of which my opponent then shields. I will be able to counter them all the way down. Yeah, I go down a shield here, or I don't. They overfarm too much, so I'm able to make that prediction and catch on the Rage Fist onto Shadow Drapion. But let's just say that you don't make that catch, right? and it's not as predictable like that. It's very risky to swap into your Drapion early because then they can land that close combat. But in this scenario, it's a pretty telegraphed catch I was able to make. But say you're not able to make that catch, right? They throw that second Rage Fist that forces your second shield. You can counter them down all the way before they reach that third Rage Fist. And that forces them to swap out or give you a ton of energy, of which then gives you an opportunity to play with later. But another reason why you want that high attack Annihilape is it allows you to get a counter breakpoint against Clodsire to now allow you to win the one shield scenario against it. But you don't want to go too high on the attack and suffer too much on the defense, because at that point, that'll allow Toxapex to get a breakpoint on you, so you no longer win the 2 shield scenario. So there's a nice little middle ground of that attack weight Annihilape spread that you need to hit there. This match is on a Shadow Gator safe swap. I just like to stay in, and you know, if I land that Rage Fist, I will just double shield and counter it down. So I'll leave boosted and have a ton of energy to threaten whatever comes in. But if they shield that Rage Fist, then I will like to swap into my Shadow Drapion, because one, Hydro won't quite take us out, but after that counter range, the counter's done onto the Shadow Gator, one crunch will definitely take them out. They come in with Azu here, so I have the Drapion to soak that energy. It is just the Ice Beam, smart play by them since it does take 2 moves to take out the Shadow Drapion. First crunch does land. They do reach their next Ice Beam before I am able to reach my next crunch, so my Drapion is going to go down, and now it's on the back of Wigglytuff to take this game. And a big reason why is I played that Gator matchup like I did is because Annihilape has an okay matchup into Gator, but Wigglytuff has an amazing matchup into their lead Pokemon. And I know, hey, I don't need a shield to take out this Low Kicks, or I don't need a shield to take out this Annihilape, or I don't need a shield to take out this Goodra, whatever it is on that safe swap. So you can very well go down that shield and get that alignment you need. Venusaur lead. And this goes for a lot of the mons that you're going to be ABA weak to with that poison subtyping, like Venusaur, like Ariados, is you play out the one shield scenario. You go for the first Rage Fist, and then I like to CMP tie them with the second move. Again, something that the high attack Annihilape is very useful for. You also win CMP tie against these matchups, forcing that shield from them back in return. And at this point, I can either let it go and get an energy lead on Shadow Drapion, but I'm like, you know what? I'm double boosted. This energy is going to go so far, of which they bring in a Shadow Kanto Marowak, play to the CMP tie, at Rage Fist almost one-shots it, not quite, but it's just very fortunate because it doesn't have to see my Drapion anymore. I don't want to come in my Drapion because I'm not sure if that's one Poison Sting range, and I don't want to take a Mud Slap, so I do come in with Wigglytuff instead. As well as it gives me the opportunity to debuff what their third Pokemon is, but they come in with the Venusaur not able to reach a move, so they concede, as I'm assuming whatever they had in the back was really weak to it. GG's. Next battle, Corsola lead, swap right into that Drapion. And you can consider this a Corsola lead for you wanting to safe swap into that Drapion right away, or you can consider this how to play out a Dewgong counter swap to your Shadow Drapion, is you want to just go for that crunch, make sure it's on good timing. For these counter Drapion safe swaps, good timing is very crucial here. And then I just like to no shield. Most of the time they'll go for that Icy Wind. If they go for that Joe Run, depending on how things are played out with timing and IVs, there's a chance you could survive it and make that next crunch. But I just like to play out the zero shield scenario and either take switch advantage or get shield advantage, especially if you get that crunch debuff on the first one, or they go for that Icy Wind as well. If you don't get that crunch debuff and then they go for the drill run, then I think there's a shot you're not able to get that shield advantage or switch. But you want to leverage any chance you can get from your opponent in that mid game. So that's why I recommend playing it out that way. But now that I have switch advantage, I can just get this Corsola onto my Wigglytuff. And this is kind of just a game over from here. I will shield the first move since I know they are going to reach 2 power gems. And I want to be able to debuff them first before they're able to land that second power gem, of which is coming through right here. Power Gem does land, and as you'll see, because we shielded that first one and now they're firing off the debuffed move, we're not in range of another Power Gem, but we throw Salt in the wound a little bit. We're able to make the catch onto our Annihilape. It is the Nightshade, so my opponent baited, but it does not matter as they will not reach another move. Now I can go for this Icy Wind against the Wigglytuff. I do get a deny, which is a little bit unfortunate for my opponent, but it doesn't matter as I would be able to reach this Swift right here to take them out anyways. But given the game state, I do reach that Icy Wind. Video cuts off a little bit earlier, but we are able to take that one. GG's. Guzzlord Lead. Now this one's a little bit tricky, right? If they swap out, you know, you gauge it based off of how you want to play it. You don't need switch advantage against a Guzzlord Lead. So I'm a little slow. My counter swap to the Charger against the Charger Bug. If I was quick, only threw one counter and then swapped into Shadow Annihilape, I could win the zero shield scenario here, right? Which would be great. But since I was late on the swap, I threw two counters and then brought in my Drapion. I'm not going to be able to win the zero shield scenario anymore, but it doesn't matter because you have the Wigglytuff, which absolutely destroys the Guzzlord. Now they bring in an Azu, and with that energy lead on Annihilape, I'm just going to shred through this Azu. I could double shield Annihilape, and then there's pretty much nothing my opponent could do at this point, or I could just get enough trip damage off onto the Azu for Wigglytuff to close it out. So since they do shield that Rage Fist, and the Azu is a little bit too healthy for it to be comfortable enough for me to just let it go and start charming with Wiggly. So I will give up a shield back in return and fire off another Rage Fist, of which does get a second shield from them. So again, they're committing shields here. I'm going to commit shields back. I'm not quite in Dragon Tail range, so my opponent can't snipe. I just need to make sure that I'm quick on my swap, which I am. So I bring in Wigglytuff. We do get the charm down, and my opponent does concede. GG's. Now this one is for a Guzzlord Lead where they stay in. It's a little bit of a tricky one to play out, just because, you know, they get to hit you back with Dragon Claws, and then you have to go all the way up to a close combat to threaten it. But I like to tank their first move and then just fire off the close combat, right? We get switch advantage, we take them out with it and play it how we want, or we get shield advantage, of which just come in with Wiggly, get the charm down. And Guzzlord Leads are decently paired with Toxapex in the back, but because of that shield advantage, you just swap into your Shadow Drapion once you see that Toxapex and you're golden. This one has a Wigglytuff as well. But like I said, you just need to make sure you're throwing on good timing here, as letting them sneak a charm through would be very detrimental here. So we land that first Aqua Tail gets a shield, second one lands, the third one's landing, and because we were throwing on good timing all throughout this matchup, we will be able to survive those poison jabs just enough to reach this crunch. Crunch debuff would be fantastic here and kind of seal the win for us, but we don't get it. Either way, a 2-shield Wiggly is going to be able to take this. It's pretty counterintuitive since that's still a pretty healthy Toxapex, and it's like, wow, those poison jabs are chunking. You have the resisted Icy Wind as a move, or the Swift, whatnot. Again, just play it out, get on that good timing. We have those shields, so they're just going to brine bait and then try and farm you down, but they're not going to make it. Swift does a decent chunk of damage, and then from here, I can just shield this up and fire off the next Swift that I have stored, and Wigglytuff becomes a Toxapex counter confirmed as the move comes through, and down goes the Pex. GG's. Next battle, we lead Annihilape into Gastrodon. Throw 10 counters, and then honestly, it's up for you whether you want to go for the close combat or Rage Fist bait. I've generally found the Rage Fist bait to be more consistent, because if they shield the close combat, you're kind of in a tough position. If it goes through, it's incredible, but if they shield it, you're in a tough position. And if they throw before, like they do, my opponent does here, then I like to give up the shield to respect that earth power. If they body slam bait you, you know, it's whatever, but you can only do what you can. Here, my opponent swaps out into a Mana Buzz, and they're going to regret that decision. But if your opponent stays in with the Gastro, just make sure they throw that move first. You go one counter, then the Rage Fist, and then again, one counter, then the Rage Fist. You'll be able to take them out, counter them down, whatever they decide to do with their shielding scenario. And then that gives you a good idea and a good position for your backline to be in, especially since they're Mud Slappers on the lead. So your Shadow Drapion does not have to see it. Dunsparce comes in, we're able to land an Icy Wind on it. They will take us out with this Joran in return. And now here, I'm actually going to bring in my Drapion and tank the move. I know that they have the Gastrodon in the lead, so this is the best spot for my Drapion to be for the Pokemon that are left in the game. So I tank the Joran, I'm going to hard swap into my Annihilape, get a little bit more counter advantage, and they hard swap into the Gastrodon, and now we just start hucking Rage Fists at this thing. First Rage Fist does get a shield, second Rage Fist does get their second shield, and now I'm just going to counter them down. I know from here that this is only Body Slam, and a Body Slam won't KO me, so I let it go. I'm able to get one extra counter onto this Gastrodon, and with that shield advantage, my Drapion's going to close out this match. I just throw the Aqua Tail right away to take less Mud Slap damage, and now I will be able to reach a crunch against this Dunsparce to take them out before they're able to roll out me down. As the crunch does come through, and down goes the Dunsparce. GG's. Next battle. Annihilape into Wigglytuff. Now this could be like Wigglytuff lead, Alolan Ninetales lead, Charmer lead, however you want to put it. You're going to swap right into that Shadow Drapion. My opponent stays in a little bit, gives me a good energy advantage. But if they stay in with that Wigglytuff, right, you're going to throw your first Aqua Tail after 5 Poison Stings due to the 1 turn it takes to switch. That is now on good timing. But if they swap out in this scenario, you just start into like a Shadow Drapion counter swap. You just start hucking off these Aqua Tails at it. And this is something that you can flip switch on, right? You want to fight to flip switch in that scenario, or you want to fight for shield advantage. And since my opponent with the Shadow Drapion, this is a very shield advantage applicable situation. So I get that shield advantage. Awesome. I can shield this crunch, get a massive energy lead, and now guess what? A close combat is going to threaten that Wigglytuff extremely. So I throw one counter, go for the close combat to force that final shield or do massive damage to the Wigglytuff. It does force their final shield, so now I'm going to pivot into my own, and they have a Dunsparce in the back, so this is a very winnable game here. What I could do is I could just let my Wigglytuff go down to 2 like drill runs, bring in my Annihilape, counter it down, then land a close combat against their own Wigglytuff. But I wasn't quite sure if the Wiggly was in close combat range yet. So I decided to shield their drill run, land an Icy Wind, tank their next drill run, and just farm. I will be able to reach an Icy Wind from here. And because I land this Icy Wind, this is just game over. If they have a Disarming Voice, you know what, so be it. But almost all Wigglytuff are on Icy Wind Swift nowadays, of which I know that I am not in Icy Wind range. So we tank that, the next charm, and get the counter down. GG's. So if you enjoyed this team from last season, it's still going strong in this one. So hopefully this more in-depth breakdown is able to help you out just that much more if you do decide to give the team a shot. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.